Let me bring in now former federal prosecutor Seth Waxman, also on set, senior Washington correspondent for Politico Anna Palmer, White House correspondent for the PBS NewsHour, and MSNBC contributor Yamiche Alcindor. Friends of the show all. Seth, you heard what Ken said, and I will ask you the same question, because the Edwards case is actually being used by some defenders of the president to say, see, he did nothing wrong. If you're going to compare it, explain this. Did or did not the president implicate himself in this Fox News interview?
Yeah, absolutely he did. First, on the campaign side, I mean, Michael Cohen's testified under oath in a plea that he engaged in criminal conduct and identified the president as a co-conspirator, an unindicted co-conspirator. With regards to the comments he's making this morning, that could be tantamount to obstruction of justice and witness tampering. You know, the comments he's making...
It could be tantamount to that.
Correct.
So where's the wiggle room here?
Well, you know, if he...
Because the president's lawyers will argue, of course not. They have been arguing, in fact, that he did nothing wrong. They've been arguing it so much that we decided to put it together and show you just how much they've been making that point.
The president did nothing wrong.
As the president has stated on numerous occasions, he did nothing wrong.
The president's an honest man. The president did nothing wrong, hasn't done anything wrong.
He did nothing wrong. As the president said, we've stated many times, he did nothing wrong. The president has done nothing wrong. What I can tell you about this is that the president did nothing wrong.
Okay. So that's the argument. You're saying this could be tantamount to some other issues potentially legally problematic for the president. Explain what would have to happen in order to make that be the reality.
Yeah, so he's done something wrong in the campaign finance world. I think all those comments are incorrect on that point. With regards to witness tampering or obstruction, when I say tantamount, I mean, if he goes ahead and pardons Paul Manafort, in my mind, that crosses the line. That is obstruction. The definition of hindering or impeding a federal investigation. When a person has potential evidence against you, you pardon them in that context. That is obstruction.
But the president is not ruling out a pardon for Paul Manafort. In fact, he's praising Manafort in this interview, and it comes as we are now hearing from one of the jurors who was on that case, who was part of that trial, speaking with Fox News, a supporter of President Trump's. Here's what she said.
How close, I want to know, did this jury come to convicting Paul Manafort on all 18 counts?
By one. There was one holdout.
What was their reasoning, if they shared with you?
Reasonable doubt. The person, a female juror, was, we all tried to convince her to look at the paper trail. We laid it out in front of her again and again, and she still said that she had a reasonable doubt. And that's the way the jury worked.
Sure. It happens. It happens where there's a juror that is a holdout, you know. But for this jury, they did come together on 8 counts. Those are substantial counts. Those are real counts. Mr. Trump's comment the other day that was, well, they didn't get me on 10 counts, or Mr. Manafort rather on 10 counts, is that's a good thing. I think misses the point entirely. You know, Mr. Manafort's essentially facing a potential life sentence. And the question is he going to cooperate with federal law enforcement? The
president's legal team will say and has argued this idea that people who come on television, for example, and say that the president did something wrong and did something illegal and point to the comments like what he made this morning are basically grasping at straws. And they're making this argument related to impeachment as well. The president was asked about this because all of this, right, is having some Democrats get the question, well, are you going to try to impeach the president? Democrats are like, don't even ask me about that word. Don't ask about the I word. I don't want to talk about impeachment. The president did talk about it. Here's what he said.
I don't know how you can impeach somebody who's done a great job. I'll tell you what, if I ever got impeached, I think the market would crash. I think everybody would be very poor, because without this thinking, you would see numbers that you wouldn't believe in reverse.
So, fact check on that. That didn't happen under President Clinton at the time. But Seth, if you're a prosecutor, or if you're a lawmaker, are you biding your time now until the midterms? Are you biding your time until the special counsel investigation is over?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. I mean, you know, Robert Mueller has an investigation that's been running for the better part of a year or more now. I think we have seen the tip of the iceberg, and it's only fair to see how that plays out. There's a lot of atmospherics going on that doesn't help Mr. Trump.
So while this is going down, there's other things that are going down behind closed doors over at the White House, right? Multiple sources are telling my colleagues and me in the White House unit at NBC that the president is relatively calm about this, relatively, at least for now. You've got staffers soldiering on, but the stories of serenity we're hearing clash with the explosive nature of what has happened in the last 3 days. And West Wing allies are bracing for what one source tells us might be an emotional meltdown by the president when it's over. Let me bring in Anna and Yamiche to the conversation here. And it seems as though there is this sense of like, okay, we're going to keep on working day to day, but you can't get rid of the news that is happening related to the president's former aides.
Yeah, I think everybody's walking on eggshells right now, right? They're just waiting for the president to explode, potentially on Twitter, in public, who knows? But clearly, the Washington Post had a great comment by Jared Kushner saying, he's withstood worse. So the president has had a lot of hard days and a lot of drama since he's been elected.
But we also know he's been watching the coverage, Yamiche. We know that because sources are telling us, right, that he's keeping an eye on what's happening on cable and elsewhere, and perhaps even in the newspapers, right? Look at his tweet. Look at the timeline of how this all went down. You had multiple newspapers, including, for example, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, coming out 7:50, 8:30, 10:30, after midnight about Michael Cohen. What happened? How he flipped? How he turned? 1:10 a.m. No collusion, all caps, rigged witch hunt. You think this is keeping the president up at night?
It's keeping the president up at night. And the fact that they're saying that they're very calm, but then they're rushing to go do an interview with Fox News at the White House, and they're rushing to put together a last-minute White House briefing where Sarah Sanders says over 5 times that the president did nothing wrong. She had a line that she needed to deliver. They are trying to kind of at least massage the narrative because I don't think they can change it. And the president is saying over and over again that this isn't a crime, that Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to something that isn't even a problem. That's obviously not a winning argument here.
So how's this playing out in the world of Donald Trump supporters? Watch.
Paul Manafort isn't Donald Trump. I mean, he didn't do that for Trump. He did it for himself.
He didn't work for Trump that long, and that was a long time ago that all this happened with what he's being charged with. So I don't think there's any connection myself between the two.
It's just, I don't know. I'm a Trump supporter. I think our economy is growing. I'm getting more money in my paycheck.
I was in West Virginia, and people simply did not care. One person told me they would continue to support the president unless he committed an act of treason or shot someone.
People get really upset, some of the folks who love to tweet at me when we run sound like that from Donald Trump supporters, because they say that's only a small-ish universe of people. That's what, less than 40% of the country that still backs him now.
I talked to more than a dozen people in West Virginia, and they did not care.
Anna?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at any of the polls, his supporters are with him no matter what.
It's Anna, Yamiche, we have way more to talk about. Seth, thank you for coming on.